Okay, so real talk for a sec. Who here hasn't, daydreamed about hitting the jackpot?
Yeah.
Like winning the lottery or whatever. Right. But then you start seeing all this advice about getting rich, and it's like, come on, am I supposed to fight a dragon too? So when I saw this Forbes article, I was like, finally, something that actually makes sense. They're talking about building wealth, but in a way that feels like doable.
Yeah, it's funny how they kind of flip the script right off the bat. They don't hit you with some crazy number like you need $1 bazillion to be rich. Instead, they're like, hold up, what does being rich even mean to you?
Yes, that's what got me hooked. It's so refreshing. They get that rich, for one person, might be retiring at 50, and for someone else, it's like building this massive empire, and neither one is wrong.
Yeah, totally. It all goes back to figuring out what you value and then matching your money goals to that, which, let's be real, is way more helpful than chasing some random definition of success. Like, if your dream is to leave a legacy for your kids, that's going to look different than someone who wants to, like, travel the world full time.
Totally. So once you've got your own definition of rich sorted, what's next?
Well, this article doesn't mess around. It jumps right into slaying the debt monster. No sugarcoating here.
Oh, they're straight up savage about high interest debt. And they're right. It's not just about owing money. It's like this hidden cost that eats away at your future wealth. Every dollar stuck in high interest debt is a dollar that could be growing for you, but instead it's just shrinking.
Ugh. Yeah, not a fun visual. But it's true. They then get into this debt avalanche thing, which sounds kind of intense. It's a total power move, though. Instead of spreading out your payments, you go all in on the debt with the highest interest rate first. Like, you still make minimum payments on everything else, but all your extra cash goes straight towards that one debt.
And once that one's gone, you take all that money you were throwing at it and roll it into the next highest interest debt, like a snowball, right?
Exactly. It might feel slow at first, but knocking out those high-interest debts one after another really picks up steam. You're not only getting rid of the debt that's costing you the most in the long run, but it's like you're freeing up more money faster, to actually put towards your goals.
I'm starting to see why they call it an avalanche. But before we get ahead of ourselves, like, we're going to be millionaires, the article brings us back down to earth with a crucial reminder. The emergency fund. Like, just when you think you can start investing, bam, back to reality.
It's that thing that's not as exciting as, like, picking stocks, but it's so essential. They make this point with a scenario that's, like, scarily relatable. What if your car just dies tomorrow? Or, you knock on wood, you lose your job. That emergency fund isn't just about being prepared. It's about having options so you don't have to make, like, panicked, expensive choices when life throws you a curveball.
It's about not racking up credit card debt or, even worse, dipping into your long-term savings just to handle some unexpected expense, right?
Yeah.
That peace of mind is huge.
Totally. Because when you're stressed about money, you don't make the best decisions. But knowing you've got that buffer, that safety net, it just frees you up to think more clearly about your finances overall.
It's like they say, money can't buy happiness, but it can buy you peace of mind. And honestly, that's a pretty good start. Speaking of making smart money moves, the article's big on starting to invest early, even if it's just a little bit.
That's where they get into this whole compounding thing, which basically means your money starts making more money. Kind of like that snowball effect we talked about, but for your investments. They're saying that even small amounts invested consistently over time can outperform larger amounts invested later just because of that time factor.
So it's not just about how much you invest, but when you start. Okay, that's pretty powerful. I gotta admit, though, they kind of lost me when they got into asset allocation and diversification. My brain just went on a coffee break. Can you break that down for me?
They lost me there for a second, too. Okay, so imagine you're at a buffet, right? You wouldn't just load up your plate with one thing, would you? You'd want a mix of stuff, keep it interesting, make sure you're covered, right? Asset allocation is like that, but for your money.
Okay, I'm following so far. So instead of putting all your money into one stock or one kind of investment, you spread it out, right? Like stocks, bonds, real estate, maybe even some gold if you're feeling fancy.
Nailed it. It's all about managing risk because the market, let's be honest, it's a roller coaster. But by spreading your investments across different types of assets, you're basically hedging your bets. So if one area of your portfolio takes a hit, another might be doing great, balancing things out.
So it's like having a safety net, but instead of catching you when you fall, it's more like smoothing out the ride. I like it. But how does this all tie back to getting rich? Like, it sounds smart and all, but does it actually help you build wealth faster?
That's where it gets personal. Remember how we talked about defining rich for yourself? Well, this asset allocation thing, it helps you tailor your investment strategy to your specific goals. Like if you're younger and just starting out, you might be more okay with taking risks.
Because you have more time to recover if things go south.
Exactly. You might go for higher risk, higher reward investments like growth stocks, maybe even some real estate stuff. But as you get closer to your goals, like that comfy retirement you mentioned, you might shift gears and focus more on protecting what you've already built.
So maybe moving some money into more stable things like bonds, right?
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between risk and reward depending on your own timeline and how much risk you're comfortable with. And as you learn and get more experience with investing, you can adjust that balance as you go.
This is making so much more sense now. It's not just throwing darts at a stock board and hoping for the best. It's like making strategic choices based on your own life and your own goals. But let's be real. Not everyone is starting out with a trust fund or a huge salary. So how do people who are just starting out, maybe feeling stuck, how do they actually boost their income so they have something to invest?
That is so important, and I love that they address that directly because it's not enough to just manage the money you have. You also have to think about ways to earn more.
It's that whole takes money to make money thing, right? But they're not just talking about getting a raise, are they?
Not even close. They're like, think bigger. They talk about always learning new skills, finding mentors in your field, even being open to a complete career change if your current path isn't leading you towards your financial goals.
I like that they're not afraid to shake things up a little. It's easy to feel stuck. But they're saying sometimes you got to be willing to make a change to really make a difference in your financial life.
100%. They even talk about side hustles or starting a business as ways to bring in extra income.
Which, let's be honest, is practically a national pastime at this point, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got a side hustle these days.
It's true. And yeah, juggling everything is tough, but the extra income stream can be a game changer. Paying off debt faster, investing more, or just having some breathing room in your budget.
It's about taking control,
Right.
Not just waiting for a raise or some lucky break.
Exactly. And speaking of going all in on your financial goals, the article talks about this whole FIRE movement, which takes things to a whole new level.
Okay, for those of us who haven't heard of it, what is the FIRE movement?
So FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. It's this whole community of people who are laser focused on retiring way earlier than what's considered normal.
And we're not talking about 60, right? These are people aiming for their 40s, even their 30s.
You got it. And they're willing to embrace a super frugal lifestyle and really aggressive saving. The article even mentions some fire folks choose to bike everywhere instead of owning a car to save money.
Okay, I'll admit, I'm not quite ready to give up my car just yet, but I can respect the commitment. It's definitely extreme, but is there anything we can learn from the FIRE movement, even if we're not, ready to go full on fire?
For sure. They highlight this thing called the Rule of 25, which is a really handy guideline for figuring out how much you need to save to be financially independent no matter when you want to retire.
Okay, now I'm really curious. Break it down for us. What is the Rule of 25?
It's actually pretty simple. You just take your annual expenses and multiply that number by 25. So for example, if you spend, say, $50,000 a year to live your life.
You need $1.25 million saved up to be financially independent.
Bingo. The idea is that with that amount invested, you should be able to pull out about 4% each year to cover your living expenses without eating into your principal too much.
So it's not just about saving a random pile of money. It's about having enough invested to generate enough passive income to support your lifestyle, basically forever. That's a whole different way of thinking about retirement.
Right. It's like shifting from depending on a job for income to having your money work hard enough to support you, even if you're not working a 9 to 5 anymore.
I gotta say, I kind of love that.
Bro.
And even if you're not planning to retire early, that calculation can be a good reality check for anyone who wants to get a handle on their financial goals.
Absolutely. It helps you visualize what it actually takes to be financially independent. Whether you're dreaming of early retirement, traveling the world, or just having the freedom to do what you love without constantly stressing about money.
Now, that's something worth striving for. But before we get too caught up in dreams of early retirement and endless vacations, the article ends on a bit of an interesting note, don't you think?
Yeah, Ouch is right. Not exactly the golden years anyone was hoping for. So how does this whole asset allocation thing, how is that supposed to keep us from ending up like, well, sad crypto investors? Okay, so picture this. You're at a buffet, right? You wouldn't just pile your plate with, mashed potatoes, would you? Maybe you would. I don't know your life. But the point is, You want a mix of stuff. Keeps things interesting. Make sure you're getting what you need. Asset allocation, it's kind of like that, but for your money.
Okay, I think I can get on board with that analogy.
Yeah.
So instead of betting it all on one stock or one type of investment, you spread it around, right? Stocks, bonds, that kind of thing. Maybe a little real estate. Throw in some gold bars for good measure.
You're getting it. It's about not putting all your eggs in one very breakable basket, because let's be real, the market. It's wild out there, ups, downs, loop-de-loops, you never know. But if you've got your investments diversified, if one area takes a hit, another might be doing great, right? It balances out over time, at least that's the hope.
So it's still a safety net, but instead of just catching you when you fall, it's like making the whole scary ride a bit smoother. I can dig it. But how does this actually make you rich? It sounds responsible, but does it actually help you build wealth faster?
Well, that's where it all comes back to you. Remember how we talked about defining rich on your own terms? Asset allocation is like the personalized game plan for your money. So if you're young, just starting out, you might be more willing to take some risks, Rick.
Because you've got more time to bounce back if things go sideways.
Exactly. So you might go for those high risk, high reward things like growth stocks, maybe dabble in some real estate. But as you get closer to your goals, like that comfy retirement we talked about, then you might shift gears. Start thinking about protecting what you've built.
So maybe move some money into the more stable stuff, like those bonds we talked about.
You got it. It's all about finding that sweet spot between risk and reward. And that sweet spot, it changes depending on your life, your timeline, and how much risk you're cool with. And the best part is, as you learn and get more comfortable investing, you can adjust that balance as you go.
Okay, this is actually making a lot more sense now. It's not just throwing money at the stock market and hoping for the best. It's about being strategic.
Yeah.
Making choices that line up with your life and your goals. Which, by the way, not everyone starts out with like $1 million inheritance or some huge salary. So for folks who are just starting out or maybe feeling a little stuck, how do they even get more money to invest in the first place? Like, how do you boost your income when you're starting from zero?
That is such a good question, and I love how this article tackles it head on. Because, yeah, it's not enough to just manage what you have when you don't have much to begin with. You've got to find ways to earn more.
It's that whole you need money to make money thing, but they're not just talking about, like, asking for a raise.
Right. No way. They go way beyond that. They're talking about constantly learning new skills, finding mentors who can help you level up, even being open to a complete career change if your current job isn't getting you where you want to be financially.
I like that they're not afraid to, like, challenge the status quo a little. It's so easy to just get comfortable, but they're saying sometimes you got to shake things up to actually make some real progress.
Totally. And they even get into side hustles and starting businesses as ways to bring in extra cash.
Which, let's be honest, it's like everyone's got a side hustle these days.
It's true. It's a lot to juggle, but that extra income stream can be huge. Pay off debt faster, invest more, or just, breathe a little easier when you look at your bank account.
It's about taking control, right? Not just waiting around for a raise or hoping you find a winning lottery ticket on the sidewalk.
100%. And speaking of really committing to your financial goals, the article also gets into this thing called the FIRE movement, which is next level dedication.
Okay, gotta ask. For those of us who haven't encountered this, what is the FIRE movement?
So FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. It's this whole community, and they are all about retiring way, way earlier than what's considered normal.
So we're not talking like retiring at 60. We're talking, what, 40s?
Yeah.
30s even?
You got it. And to do that, they're all about living super frugally, saving like crazy, and investing aggressively. Like the article even mentions some FIRE folks choose to bike everywhere instead of owning a car just to save money.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. I like my car. A lot. But I can respect the dedication. It's intense. But is there anything we can take away from the FIRE movement, even if we're not, ready to go full on fire?
Oh, absolutely. They talk about this thing called the Rule of 25, which is super helpful even if you're not planning on early retirement. It's a rule of thumb for figuring out how much you need to have saved to be financially independent, whenever that might be for you.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Break it down. What's the Rule of 25?
It's actually really simple. You just take your annual expenses, how much you spend in a year to live your life, and multiply that number by 25. So let's say you spend, $50,000 a year.
You'd need to have $1.25 million saved to be financially independent.
That's it. The idea is, with that amount invested, you should be able to withdraw around 4% each year, which would cover your living expenses without really digging into the principal.
So it's not just about saving a random amount. It's about having enough invested that it generates enough passive income to, like, support your lifestyle indefinitely. That's wild.
Right. It's a total shift in thinking. Instead of relying on a job for income, you're letting your money work hard enough to support you, even if you're chilling on a beach somewhere.
I gotta say, I kind of love that idea. And even if you're not planning on early retirement, that calculation, that rule of 25, it's a really good way to wrap your head around what it actually takes to be financially independent, no matter what your goals are.
Exactly. It helps you visualize it, you know? Whether you're dreaming of retiring early, traveling the world, or just having the freedom to pursue your passions without stressing about money all the time.
Now, that is a goal worth striving for. But before we get too caught up in daydreams of early retirement and endless vacations, the article ends on, well, kind of a funny note, don't you think?
Hmm.
It's like they spend the whole time giving you these, like, practical, reasonable steps to build wealth, and then bam, right at the end, they're back to talking about those get-rich-quick schemes, which, let's be real, are probably what got most people reading in the first place, right?
Right. It's kind of funny when you think about it, but I actually think it's smart. Like, they're using that whole easy money thing that we all secretly kind of want to believe in to drive home the point that, nah, this is a long game, not a shortcut.
It's like they're saying, look, we know those shortcuts are tempting, but here's the truth.
Exactly. Like, there's no magic formula, no secret loophole, and if anyone tells you different, they're probably trying to sell you something. Real wealth, lasting wealth, it takes time, it takes discipline, and it takes making smart decisions even when they're not, like, exciting or
It's
glamorous.
like resisting that urge to chase the next shiny thing, staying focused on the long game.
Yeah, and building a solid foundation one step at a time, making choices that will actually pay off years down the line.
This has been, honestly, such an eye-opening deep dive for me. I feel like we've gone way beyond just talking about, you know, dollars and cents. This is about something bigger.
I'm with you on that. It's about realizing that building wealth, it's not just about having a ton of money. It's about building a life where you have financial security and freedom and the opportunity to actually pursue the things you care about.
Absolutely. So for our listeners who are fired up and ready to start taking control of their financial futures, where do they start? What's one thing they can do, like, today?
Love that question. Honestly, I'd say go back to that definition of rich that we talked about. What does that word actually mean to you? Not to some magazine article, not to your neighbor, but to you. Once you have that clear vision of what you're working towards, that's when you can start making decisions that actually align with what you value.
That's such a good point. Because once you know what you want, then you can figure out the best path to get there. Whether that's tackling that debt, starting that emergency fund, or taking the leap into investing, every step you take, it gets you a little closer to your own definition of rich.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And just remember, building wealth is a journey, not a destination, right? You're going to hit bumps in the road, take a few detours, but the important thing is to just keep learning, keep growing, and don't be afraid to ask for help along the way.
Love that. So to all our listeners out there, keep asking questions, keep exploring, keep those financial goals front and center. You got this. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the wild and wonderful world of wealth building. Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep.